everyone for being here. So as she alluded to, we are in an experience economy, right? This is not new information to us or new concept by any means. But it definitely has come to the forefront right now. So as travelers are demanding more unique experiences, what does that mean for our hotels? What does that mean for us? So today we're gonna, ask that question, but more importantly, we're gonna see how we can apply this in our design, our activations, our programming throughout our stay. And we have a great panel. Nicole's not wrong about that. I mean, this whole time we had, pre-calls, it was like, oh my God, you guys are amazing. Can we talk for like 3 hours? But we have hospitality industry experts. We also have people who are in the entertainment industry as well to kind of, talk about the experience economy and what's next. So with that, I do want to start with some introductions. I will start first just because you guys really want to hear them, I'm going to be honest. But I'm Alexa Schaefer. I am Director of Strategy at ChangeUp. I help lead and guide our strategy and innovation practice. For those of you I have not been able to meet yet, but hopefully will later tonight, ChangeUp is an experience design agency. Everything we do is really geared into our, brands, right? And helping brands come to life in their physical space. So we offer true end-to-end experience from, of course, brand strategy and innovation, but also from a design standpoint, whether it's through visual identity design and even interior design, environmental design, architecture, engineering. We are licensed in all 50 states. We can do it all, y'all. But with that, enough about me, enough about ChangeUp. Let's turn it over to our lovely panelists. And we'll just go in order. Just say your name, what you do, and favorite place to travel.
Oh, wow. Okay, I was not expecting that one. I am Darcy Troy-Pollack. I am the Vice President of Immersive Experiences and Content Partnerships for MGM Resorts out of Las Vegas. I actually live in Los Angeles, and I only joined MGM a couple of years ago, really with the goal of helping MGM think about, let's call it non-traditional entertainment on the Las Vegas Strip. So we were just talking about the fact that a lot of Las Vegas Strip is really driven by traditional butts and seats, big spectacles, Cirque du Soleil, residencies. And really my job is to help MGM think about these new forms of entertainment that we're starting to see and bringing them to our portfolio properties. Prior to this, I was with Walt Disney Imagineering. I've been in location-based entertainment, by the way, for way too long, like 30 plus years, which just gives away my age. But I was at Imagineering before, and so a lot of, I think, what I bring to the table is bringing some of these theme park, some of the philosophy behind that kind of design to these kinds of experiences. And I really oversee creative for our portfolio. Vince.
What's your favorite place to travel?
Oh, shoot, I forgot my favorite place to travel. Oh, it's really hard because I have that same struggle we all have, which is, do you want to go back to the place you love or do you want to go to something new, right? Like that's always the thing. Honestly, hiking in Switzerland always is going to win.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So hey, what's up? I'm Vince Kadlubek. I'm one of the co-founders of Meow Wolf, which is an arts and entertainment production company out of Santa Fe, New Mexico. We build these very large-scale, kind of very over-the-top, maximalist, immersive storytelling experiences, though the story is abstract, and it's mostly art that is kind of being expressed in these immersive spaces. And we're kind of learning like what we do and what people want out of these immersive experiences. But you'll get to see one of them tonight. We have 4 of them. We have one in Santa Fe. We have one in Vegas, thanks to Winston, the partnership with Winston. And we have one in Denver. And we just opened one in Dallas this year. So we'll get to see that one tonight. We started off as an art collective. So it was really about creating art in a way that was not happening in the contemporary art world, which really meant like maximalism and covering every square inch of a room with art. And we kind of quickly realized like, oh, okay, we're creating a world. So maybe we should think about putting characters in those worlds. And maybe we should think about, making those worlds even bigger and more dynamic. And And then I was the little capitalist of the group, and I was like, what if we charge people admission prices to see this? And like, what would the profit margin be? And I was like, oh shit, the profit margin is 60%. Wow. And so yeah, so then we became a business. And my favorite place to travel.
Yes.
I barely even started having money to travel. Like it was like the end of 2019. My bank account finally had enough money in it where I could be like, I can travel. And then I was like, boom, COVID. So I have not traveled internationally like hardly at all. So domestically, I love Southern Utah. I love Moab, Zion, Powell, like Amangiri. That's where I went when the COVID hit. I was like, I'm going to Amangiri. Fuck it. And so I went to Amangiri.
Fucking travel. We like fucking
end of the world at Amangiri. That's what I'm going to do. Anyway, so I love Southern Utah. I think it's gorgeous, and there's so much exploration to do there, so much experience.
It's great.
Hi, Winston Fisher. I'm co-founder of AREA15. I'm also a partner in my family business, Fisher Brothers. So I have two very distinct hats. AREA15 is an immersive entertainment company platform that we launched in Las Vegas. We started as a 200,000 square foot content box of really cool experiences, food and beverage, crazy events from music to fight parties to you name it, and really cool things to do. And the campus just keeps expanding. Fast forward, in the next 2 years, we'll be about 600,000 square feet of space. Universal will be there. Meow Wolf. We have a 747 I bought from Burning Man that we're turning into a nightclub experience. There's a lot of, it's really cool things to do in a very creative way. So a lot of brands working with us under a brand. And so we were the #1 attraction in America last year, as measured by Placer AI, 3.4 million visitors. So it's been really exciting to see the growth in Vegas. And then my other hat is, which is how I sort of got into it, is a partner in my family business, which is a real estate development firm. We own and operate commercial, residential. We actually we run a finance platform. I actually just approved a loan in Boston for Sheraton. So we do, mezz lending, et cetera. So I really do run the gamut of, actually I've owned hotels before, of immersive entertainment, retail, placemaking with traditional real estate sort of underpinning, I guess, how I think about world. And oh God, where to travel? There's so many cool places. The easy thing is the new place, but I guess Paris. I mean, I know it's cliche, but it's just, the food is so.
There's a draw.
Like
it's real.
It's just awesome. Thanks.
God, nobody mentioned Cleveland. Don't understand. First thing, I need to change my photo up there. I think it's not truth in advertising at this point in time. So probably said, who is this guy sitting up here? That picture doesn't look anything like it. Anyway, I'm Gary Dollins, and I'm with Hyatt, the traditional, I say traditional hotel company, hospitality company, but we're anything but a traditional company today. I've been with Hyatt since I was in college, so I kind of started as a job to pay the bills and keeps paying them all these years later. I run our global product and brand development. So any brand that we're doing, any new brand, we work on the look and feel and what that brand's going to be like, or if we're reinventing one, trying to redo a brand. And then I also have it's fun because I get to oversee then the execution piece. So we've got offices in Chicago, Dubai, Zurich, and Hong Kong, and those offices report in. So what we're creating, then we're working on executing as well. I mentioned in the beginning, traditional hotel company, but as I said, we're anything but, because as I think we'll talk about in a few minutes, we've had this transformational period of time. We're now we're in some by planning, some by just good luck. I think, because you can't take credit for everything that goes right, just like you can't take the blame for everything that goes wrong. we're a significant player now, the largest player in all-inclusive, which is it's completely different than what all-inclusive was 10 years ago even. I'd actually stay in these hotels now before I'd be like, yikes. And in the lifestyle space, broad word, but that it was the baby or now the grandfather of experiential hotel thought process, the creativity of it, and it was, again, some was luck, some was not, and so it's really changed who we are. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. It's interesting. I hear where people are all want to or enjoy traveling to. My favorite place to go to is Capri, Italy. I love the island, but most importantly, I love it because the first time we went there and stayed there, it was great. It was beautiful, and you kind of find your way away from where all the day trippers come from, from the Amalfi Coast, and you get away from it. And then kind of one day wandered into this tiny little hotel, and went in there, and they greeted us. And then we sat down, and then then he makes us says, "What do you want to drink?" And I don't know, a Moscow Mule Italiano, okay, lemons instead of limes. And this experience just started right there, and you find out it was a family-owned business, multi-generational, and then it just like you got sucked in, and every year back there because of that. And that is what, when I think about experience, it is about how you feel. It is a beautiful place, but is there a nicer place? Probably. Newer? Probably. But experientially, that's what starts the whole process, and that's why it's the favorite place to go.
I love it. I love it. So, like I mentioned, the experience economy, this is not new by any means, right? But I think we can all agree that COVID has really helped bring it to the forefront, right, in a pretty aggressive way. So with that, how has the guest changed? How has your customer changed? What do they need now that they didn't before? And maybe what could you get away with before that you can't get away with now? Gary, do you want to start? You want to start us off in the traditional hospitality realm?
Well, the first comment is they are prepared to overpay for the brand of their choice and the experience of their choice. So almost 60% of people out there are ready to. They weren't necessarily ready to do that before. Mm-hmm. I think that COVID brought a value to getting out there and having something that was very different than what they were locked into for a period of time. The lack of travel. I think actually in the beginning of COVID, we all got away with a lot because it was just getting out of your apartment, or away from your home or your kids or whatever. But I think as time went on, then it was this. Okay, now what's got what I really want to go and experience? Whether it's any of your venues, whether it was a hotel, but what I think that the pandemic accelerated was a very simple concept: moving parts. Hotels that have a lot of moving parts to them today are very popular again, whereas for many years, all you did was skinny down an experience. I think throughout life, by the way, not just in hotels. Everything that if you go back 20 or 30 years and what you were receiving in terms of all these different amenities or experiences just got skinny down one by one from a cost perspective. And I think that what the pandemic did was bring back or accelerate that appreciation for something that was really valuable to me and added something to my life. And so that's the expectation of the customer. And as a result of that, they have overpaid for it. They're prepared to overpay for it in order to get that experience. Whether it's airfare, hotel, or visiting an attraction, the money was out there and they were spending it as a result of that, but only if they were getting what they were looking for in that experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the consumer today, we have a saying, spectator to participant. And so the idea of really, whether it's a hotel or a place that's an experience, a mall, whatever you want to call it, you have to be able to allow people to have agency. You have to be able to, they're looking to feel emotional connection to your brand more than ever. So it's they share it. They share it everywhere, but they all share it through different ways. Do they put it on Instagram, TikTok? Is it YouTube? All of these different things, and people want to feel that there's a place that they can, I say peacock, but it's that they're connected. It's not just a wall that you can put something on Instagram. It's an authentic experience that they can walk in and they can feel that this is genuine, it's cool, they can be part of it, they feel connected to the brand value that you say you are has to be real. And I think the consumer today sees that more than ever. And the brands that don't, so they will overpay, they will come back, they will do all those things, but you can't fool them. And that's actually what I think is, so whether you're skinning it down, it's the worst way to go. You have to know who you are, and you have to give, if you promise something, you have to give it, and you have to give it with depth and authenticity. And that's what we see people walking through the door.
But I think one of the other interesting things you just said is people are looking for agency, right? Matthew Ball, the futurist, says every person born today is born a gamer, right? And those of us who are not digital natives can't really fully understand what that means. But the truth of it is, even for our own generations, but particularly for younger generations, they want to be the hero in their own story. So our responsibility is actually to create, not when we talk about story, I'm not talking about linear plot, and this is where, you know, I think AREA15 and Meow Wolf are such great examples. We're really talking about creating story worlds in which all of us can live out our own individual adventures. I mean, I use as an example a lot, Harry Potter is, I think, a really interesting IP, because Harry Potter, even though we followed Harry and his friends on their particular journey, we know, we have such a good sense for the rules of gravity and the rules of civilization that J.K. Rowling created, that we know we could have followed the stories of any of the characters living in that universe, and we know that we could live our own story there. And it's one of the reasons why, if any of you have been to Wizarding World at Universal, it works so well as an IP, because we actually go in and it is very natural to that IP that I can go in to buy a wand, and that is exactly what Harry would have done, right? And so it allows me to live out my own journey within this universe. And I think even within hotels, that idea of I'm creating an ecosystem in which I can draw my own journey, right, is, I think, still a powerful thing.
Yeah, I'll build on that a little bit too. The digital native part, you know, really ask yourself, you know, what are some of the core functionalities that people experience 1,000 times a day while they're on the internet, and what digital native generations are born doing, basically. You have complete agency over your experience. You get to go, you find the content you want to find. You go to websites you want to go to. That's one of the key components. You also, on social media especially, are looking for something that you've never seen before. You're constantly looking for stuff that you've never seen before. We like things and share things and stop on our scroll when we haven't seen it before. So that's now become a huge value. And we do it all the time on our phones and on the internet, but when you step out into the real world, everything is what I've seen before. That's why AREA15 works. That's why AREA15 has drawn 3 million plus people off the strip, because it's something they've never seen before, and that's what they want. They just can't find it in the physical world, because real estate developers and people financing real estate projects haven't gotten around to that. Because it's like, that's the scariest thing to real estate developers. That's the scariest thing to people financing real estate projects is, wait, we haven't seen it before? I want things that are like tried and true in every market if I'm going to finance that, right? Mm-hmm. And the last thing I'll say that's, you know, connected to digital natives is this idea that I can explore, and if I explore, there's something to discover. So I Google a person's name, it comes up. Oh, let me see if they have any YouTube videos. That comes up. Oh, they're talking about this person. I'm gonna go down rabbit hole. Who's that person? Like, people, digital native generations, and us, all of us too, we have the ability to go down rabbit holes, and then we're rewarded for that.
Yeah.
So like, those things are valuable to consumers these days. And I think that those are true in any experience, including hotels or hospitality.
Well, yeah, when you check into your room or you show up, are you a commodity, which by the way has value, but even inside that, there is today experiences, storytelling. You say it's not a story world like Jack ran up the hill and this. It's actually about what is your story? What are you? How do you want people to feel? How do you write yourself? Like, it does actually help to have a creative backstory to whatever you do. Like, when we do if you're going to build a building, if you're going to build a hotel, you're going to build an office building, what's the story? Like, what is this? Where does it fit into a story world? And then curate to that, because that actually determines what outfits should the check-in the host wear. What's your bedding look like? I mean, all of these things, and then we're talking physical. Today's world, the paradigm shift is AI, and the ultimate goal in experiences is individualization. I think that's the ultimate goal at this point for anybody in this room too, I would argue. And now you have a chance with AI to actually create individual connection and emotion and experience for your hotel that never existed before.
But it's a combination of that hyper personalization together with hyper socialization, right?
100%.
When I talk about immersive experiences, I always talk about three things. I talk about story, which we've talked a lot about. I talk about sensory. So, and that's something where in the hotel business, you really can, and I know, like, I walk through our different resorts in Las Vegas and they each smell differently. Like, I know we're thinking about those things at that level, but that kind of really deep dive into what does it mean to be a multi-sensory experience. But then the last thing is social. And that's the thing that we really learned coming out of COVID is people want to connect, but it comes back, Gary, to what you were saying, which is it's cheers. I want to be in a place where everybody knows my name, right? Like, there's something that feels so good about I walked in. I used to stay, I love this hotel, by the way. I used to stay at the Jefferson in Washington, D.C. And I walked in, like, I would go in and they knew who I was. It was wonderful. I went back 5 years later. I'm like, nobody's going to know me anymore. I walk in the front door. So nice to see you again. How have you been? I was like, I'm home. I'm never going to stay in another hotel in Washington, D.C. I don't care what it costs. To your point, I'm willing to pay for that, right?
The reality also is that less than 25% of your business is ever repeat customers. So how do you create that same feeling for all of those other individuals? There's ways to do it, but too often I think that hotels and in general, their story becomes about the material and not about the action. And so the experience, you hear people all the time. I'll take hotel tours and I'll say, oh, the marble came from where? And this, this is, African carpet from where? I'm like, who cares?
That's not
right?
it. Yeah.
It has no relevancy in what my experience is going to be here. And so it is all about that other piece. And how do you do that? Because again, most of your people aren't repeat customers. That's the greatest feeling in the world when you get that. But how do you create the same thing for individuals that are there for the first time, where you actually make them feel like, I'm glad you're here. I'm really happy. I had that experience here today when I went to one of the other buildings over here and had a lunch by myself, sat there early. I was on East Coast time, so I wanted to eat early, and I went over there, but the lady was fantastic at making me feel that way. That's, I think, the biggest challenge that we have in terms of spaces. I've always said that you design spaces to enable the experience to occur, period. So from there on, you can screw it up or you can make it better, depending upon what the rest of the story that does get articulated to those individuals that are actually executing upon that experience.
Yeah, well, that's a good tie into storytelling and design. So, talk to me about some of these, elements of design, and more specifically, the role that it plays in delighting the guest, right? Like, what are you trying to have the design achieve?
So for us, I think you'll experience it tonight. Is to start with agency. You give people choice, because that's how we live our lives, and that's what people want in an experience, is to have agency. With that agency, people will explore, and with that exploration, people will discover. And do they have the ability to explore? Are there things to explore? And if they do they get rewarded with things to discover? That's kind of at the core of our experience design. And if they seek question, or they seek answers, there's somebody there to guide them. And I think that that's an additional detail that takes us from the experience economy into what is known as the transformation economy.
Sure.
Which is, people will actually not even want to just do experiences anymore. They're going to want to do experiences that transform their lives.
Sure.
That's going to be the next evolution here. And that takes guidance. That takes people there.
Well, don't talk anymore about that, because we might have a question later.
Yeah.
So we need to pause on
Meow
that.
Wolf, they also, is what Meow Wolf did risky, or is it the least risky thing you could do, which was they created a deep, emotionally connected experience that it was not designed to appease. It was actually designed in a way that reflected an incredible group of artists who had a passion, and they've put together something, and there's a reason it was lightning in a bottle and people are copying it. But it's hard to do, but so many people want to take the easy path. They want to take well, if you're supposed to do a contemporary design, then I should do a contemporary design. That's actually not, I think that is very risky. It means you're fighting for breadcrumbs, always to differentiate yourself. And if you can actually create a product that is, and it doesn't have to be zany like Meow Wolf, but create a product that is genuine, authentic, and emotionally connected, you're not fighting for breadcrumbs. You're not fighting for your RevPAR to go up because you're outperforming, a star report by 3%. You're actually something that people talk about, they share about, they rate you, you're a place that they have to come see, or have to come experience, or have to return to. And people just don't do it enough. And so
The physical world's boring
it is, but it doesn't have to be.
Well,
compared to the internet.
it's interesting though. You say the word's boring, because if you go back in time, people would always tell you about the one bad experience they had. Today, it is much more frequent that they tell you about the one or two good experiences they have, because the world's flipped upside down to a degree when it comes to that kind of an experience. I don't think you can go through your day and say, let me tell you about all the good experiences I had today during my travel.
Yeah.
I think you're going to tell them about 8 of them that were really very average, and maybe 1 was a decent, or 2 were a really good experience. That's unusual, and I think that's where the world's flipped.
I mean, I think it's interesting thinking about applying. So in immersive experiences, first of all, we didn't define that term. And I will tell you, there's no generally accepted definition of that term. I always say it's sort of like the flip side of the metaverse, right? If the metaverse is this weird digital thing that nobody really understands, and kind of has tentacles into the real world, for me at least, immersive experiences is that sort of like weird thing that nobody understands, that kind of lives in the physical world, has tentacles into the virtual, but it lives in lots of different ways. And so you can look at Meow Wolf, which is sort of these exploratory experiences, Team Lab, and other kinds of light and media experiences, all the projected art experiences. I call them the projected name your favorite artist experiences. There's all the kinds of game experiences, escape rooms, and
Theme parks.
Immersive food. There's theme parks. There's
Big
all
golf.
of this. So I think one really interesting thing is to sort of take a look at all these different the toolkits that have been developed for all these different kinds of experiences, and imagine what you could do if you were applying those into the hospitality environment, right?
Absolutely, because too much agency in a hotel is not going to go well, right? I mean, people need to be guided along the way. There's wayfinding that goes along with it. Where does the story even begin?
I don't know. So that's least for me, I'm not saying that you should take every hotel and turn it into a Meow Wolf. That's not actually.
Right. Yes.
Is there a space for that? Yes. What we're talking about, though, is, in my mind, is how is a hotel, whatever it's meant to be, an experience, right? If you're going to be a roadside motel, is there something you can do that, again, story connection that leans deeper into it? Of course, you have to have the basics of how do you get to your room, right? But like, it's not transform. It's knowing who you are and giving that customer that extra oomph. It's using technology. It's training your staff to be a little bit better than the person down the road where they're connected to that story, right? It can be incremental changes that yield outsized value. So immersive or experiential runs the gamut. Mini golf, is a perfect example. For years, it was a Jersey Shore experience where you had the volcano. They're building a $50 million mini golf experience in
Ideal.
Mandalay Bay. And what is it? It's Swingers is super cool. It's a really cool bar. The mini golf isn't even that great, but it's the best experience, right? Because you can go in and play. You've got Putt Shack, which it's not particularly hard, but they took a mini golf experience and they added some tech and some gameplay. And all of a sudden it exploded. So how does, Hijingo, we were talking about a bingo experience. I don't know if any of you play bingo. If you go to London, go to Hijingo. They've got Hijingo bots and blah, blah. I want to play Hijingo. All they did was just reskin bingo. I mean, and it's cool. So what is, I keep thinking, to me, we took basically a foundation of a mall of a collection of experiences. We threw in really cool stuff, thought about content refresh through events, and had people come and put together through this fantasy world by putting them there. In 3 short years, it's accomplished more than, frankly, we expected. So how does a hotel do that? How do you just add that, just be different and for who you are, and you get rewarded?
Yeah, I think if you take away something, that's the point. I was thinking about the same thing because there are all different levels. To somebody that's used to stay, I'm just going to use miscellaneous brands, used to stay in a Courtyard, and AC may be the experience for them based from the Courtyard. And at every level, you've got those different things. When Dan Hansen was talking this morning on our behalf on the Hyatt Studios brand, it is a mid-scale, upper mid-scale, extended stay brand. When we worked on the brand, we were trying to figure out what are the meaningful differentiators for that brand in a very crowded space of which we have to be represented in. And that's what we focused on. Not, okay, let's just build another box and call it, it's got our name on it. But how do we create those few things that somebody that will stay in that space will go, I actually prefer this now because I'm getting something that's a little bit different in its uniqueness. I'll give you a simple example. Instead of putting the traditional microwave in the room, which every brand in that segment has, we tied the market offerings to one of these air fryer, convection, air poppers, you name it, in the guest room, that when you buy here, you get here. And that ties together in what the experience is going to be in that segment. It's simple, but in that segment, it is a differentiator from an experience that somebody goes in and, wow, I can actually, I'm not going to pay $32 for this frozen pizza that now I can't do anything with. And it creates something that is unique and special. And that happens at every different level.
Exactly. By the way, Schrager is, to me, one of the great experience designers. I mean, look, what he did with he took South Beach, white rooms, it was awesome. That was an experience. For anybody who went there back in the day, oh my God, the pool scene, that was a curated experience.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about the guest rooms. I said that the other day. You know, the guest rooms are always a surprise. I remember the first time I was at the Mondrian in LA, and I was like, oh, the Sky Bar, the Sky Bar. First of all, I wasn't in the sky.
No, it was not.
It was up 3
Always bugged me,
steps.
by the way.
What's that?
As a Los Angeles native, that has always bothered me.
Right? It wasn't in the sky. We went through the lobby, you went back there, and then you walked up 4 steps, and I'm like,
Yeah.
this is the Sky Bar? And then you went up to your guest room, and you were horrified. You were like, oh my God, it had an avocado bathtub in it, and the sofa had a shabby chic, throw over it. But everybody stayed there because of all the other things that were surrounding it.
He knew what he was.
Yes.
So I do think the hotel space can look at these micro experiences and know what it is and add that level of either programming or design. And I will keep going back to and think about tech, because tech is a game changer today. It is actually your ability to customize space, the chat GPT, the concierge experience, the individualization of the guest has just gone from here, and it's accelerated. And we don't need to be Disney anymore to spend $10 billion. You can just white label something.
I think what's really interesting about the experience economy now is that you can truly turn almost anything into a reason to be, a reason to belong, a destination. And Darcy, you mentioned this on our call, having that toolbox and that toolkit. Let's unpack that. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what's in your toolkit when you think of this? And we'll just go down the road.
It's funny. I was just thinking about this as we were talking. We were talking about customer service. I mean, part of the toolkit in immersive theater is a whole new form of performance, which involves having EQ, having a script, but being able to improv on that and be responsive, being able to read the room, as it were, to understand. Vince really doesn't want me to pull him into this, but Winston, he's all in, right? Like, he wants to play the game. And there are, that's a very simple example, but that idea of sort of thinking through that lens of immersive experience techniques, but it could be anything, right? It could be, are there really interesting ways to incorporate beautiful, LED technology or gamification, like we talked about before, during, after, right? How do we bring people along for the ride using the kinds of techniques that we have in that immersive toolkit?
I've been consulting with a handful of clients over the last couple of years, and who want to design immersive experiences. And it's amazing to me how consistently every single client ignores the power of sound. It's like we sort of ignore it. We sort of like take it for granted or something. Like, how many like amazing restaurants have you been in that are just like the food's so good, but the sound sucks?
Yeah.
Or like hotel lobby. I mean, like walking in like 5-star hotels with like these amazing lobbies where like it must be like multiple thousands of dollars a square foot like being put into these spaces, and then like the sound is all high pitched, tingy. There's no low end. Like, it's like coming from one corner and it's some like shitty Clear Channel pop song or something. Like, sound is really significant in creating a quality immersive
It's more than music, right?
Yeah.
It's like soundscape
Right.
is
Like
more than music.
And I'd say with the power of spatial audio at this point, like, you can really pull people in, and it feeds on the subconscious. It gets people to subconsciously like kind of like settle into the experience. So that's like one of the tools that I like to focus on.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I guess it's, we're always looking again as starting with emotion, right? What are we trying to accomplish? What is the brand pillars, the emotion? How are we conveying that to whatever experience we have? And when you have a really clear sense of who you are, who is your brand, and what emotion you want to accomplish, and then also know your guest clearly. From that, for me, frankly, narrowing the boxes then allows us to really open up to sound, light, spectacle, wonder. What is that? I love what you also said is can't do everything for everybody, so we always try to find what are the few things we can do that are really unique or different using various mediums. So that's it's it's really fun going through that creative process.
You can we talk a lot about technology and what it's going to do, and I think that in hotels it has its place. First of all, technology has to work. It doesn't work, which in so many places it doesn't. It becomes the most frustrating thing in the world. But, you can utilize technology then to use your human assets, your human resources in better ways, right? So somebody may want to go straight to room, but that doesn't mean that there's nobody that you meet from the point you arrive to the time you get to your room. How do you use your assets to then create that personalized experience instead of having it be a transactional experience, that you have, when you're arriving? When I think about a brand that I think about a couple of brands come to my mind, because first of all, I typically don't stay in a Hyatt hotel unless I haven't been there before. I'll always stay somewhere else, always want to look at something else, because I'm not going to learn anything about what we do. So, I think about hotel brands, and one that I think has done a great job with spaces because it doesn't have single-use space is Hoxton. I think Hoxton has done a great job of being able to have spaces that transform themselves from the morning, noon, night, and it does it all well. A lot of times spaces are good spaces during the morning, but bad spaces in the afternoon. Good spaces
so well.
at night, the bad spaces at midday, and so you put it all together, and theirs works. Another one that I was reminded when you were talking about sound was RH. I think RH does a great job. They've really created something in their brand for what they are. Gary has been maniacal about that, I think. And when you sit in the guest house and have dinner there, you look at the sound, the light, the food experience, all of it together create something that is really good, because they are thinking about all of that. The worst thing is, and a lot of times we create spaces that will work very well if people only didn't change the light system so that you could do surgery in the lobby at a bar, right? And that happens all the time. You're like, what is going on in here? But you want to see spaces used the way they were intended to be used, and that goes back to the purpose of design, is you go, you sit there, you watch. Are they really utilizing this the way you thought they might use it? Because if they're not, you've got a colossal failure, unless they really love it, and then you just got lucky.
What does it look like? Kind of shifting gears just a little bit. Building loyalty, right? From a stay experience, something that's, lifestyle or, so immersive. How do you create that loyalty within the guest, new user versus reoccurring guest? What does that look like? What's your approach? How is it different between the two?
From my perspective, look, if you think about Disney, it's a combination of creating something that people know and love and want to go back to. It's a bit of that nostalgia factor, married with something that is also always changing, right? That is always bringing in new elements, new attractions. In the case of Disney, that one or the other can work, but when you have those two things together, it's impossible to stop, right? You've got the whole package. I want to go back because I want that feeling of when I was a kid, but I also want to go back because I want to see what they did with Galaxy's Edge or what have you.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's the same is true with loyalty in any relationship, really. It's like, I can rely on it. I know what it is, and I can rely on it. And it also has space for possibility, and it's also empowering. The relationship empowers me to be something even greater, or there's room for possibility there. I've been thinking just a lot in this conversation about how I think immersive experiences and the experience economy, consumers go and they feel like anything is kind of possible for a moment. Like they go to AREA15 and they're not exactly sure what might happen that day. And Winston doesn't get in their way. He doesn't try to tell them what's going to happen, which is also, I think, an important aspect to this. But yeah, that loyalty, I think honoring and seeing a space, honoring and seeing you and respecting you, I think that's a big one too. That goes back to agency. Like Winston doesn't have to tell his guests what to do, because he trusts that they're going to find what they want to do. And that's same with Meow Wolf. And I think that there's sort of a respect there where like if you over operationalize, I think like operations is something that's also gone through a lot of evolution with regards to this, where like in the 90s, like you didn't want anyone to get lost. And so you had to tell them everything, like tell them everything. And people wanted that. But like now we're like, shut the hell up. I can Google. Like I'm smart enough. I know what to do. Like I got this. Just let me do my thing, you know? And it's a small little thing, but it's like honoring the agency of others, I think creates a respect and rapport that makes people want to go back.
I think you take everybody's phone away from them when they arrive, and then you really get an experience.
Yeah.
They're like, where am I? You know,
Start screaming.
But it is a medium, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody here has done this VR experience called The Infinite.
Yeah, totally.
So
Felix and
I
Paul.
love these guys. It's a group called Felix and Paul. They do beautiful VR, and they took 360 footage from the NASA space station. So you're basically walking out into space. And it would have been very easy for that experience to have been a little unmooring, right? Because you walk out and you don't really know what you're going to do. You just know you're touching these orbs and you're seeing new content. What they did that I thought was so smart, and it's a good lesson in not guiding people, but giving people guideposts, right? And it's different. And so they created these sort of chapter headings. So I always knew that they were watching me, that they had my back. They were holding my hand, but it wasn't so tight that I couldn't do what I wanted to do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So it's kind of a balance, I think, right?
Totally.
Yeah. I mean, look how you connect. I'd say it's sort of interesting that when you think about loyalty, I do think you have to look at industry, right? For immersive experience, Meow Wolf, AREA15, MGM to some extent, but I think it's more in I'll say the traditional is how do we emotionally connect with our customer? How do we extend that emotional connection, give them that they're part of it, and that there's, again, I'd say, I actually spoke about this at IAPA, right? Tradition versus new, right? When you crack the holy code, then you get it, and that's why you're going back to that hotel tradition. So immersive experience is a little bit different, but hotels or even ourselves, at some point the customer does also care about price, value. They have to see that they feel they're getting. It can't be sometimes too complex is also not good. So it is that fine line of you're creating loyalty and emotional connection, and at the same time giving them a platform that not only extends that emotional connection, but has very clear value that they can see they're either gaining or turning in. And I mean, look at all the complaints today. Delta changed their, well, it was pretty big, right? And they walked it back. I would imagine at MGM, look, at the end of the day, everything happening is that rewards card's really important. Comp is really important. So you've got it. It's straddling that space between good tried and true things, really good perception of value, and then cracking that code that loyalty and membership is emotional. And that's a really powerful combination.
Yeah, look, it was the late Arnie Sorensen who said the most important brand Marriott had was Bonvoy, their loyalty brand.
Yeah,
right. You know, and it's true. Look, I think that it's all of the above, as has been said here today. But here's why it's really important that you figure it out, because sometimes people talk about generationally how people aren't as loyal as they used to be. It's absolutely not true. People are more loyal today than ever. They find something they like. They're more loyal than ever. And why do they leave it? They leave it because you did something to piss them off.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's why they leave you. And so it's really important to figure it out, whatever, again, what's right for your brand, for what you're trying to do within whatever segment or piece of whatever industry it is, that you do it, because that will reap the rewards, because it is the most important brand you have, the amount of customer loyalty that you have.
And, you know, today, too, we're seeing with experience economy, there's so many brands that are coexisting together and building strong partnerships. So let's talk about that. How can we rethink the way that brands coexist in this economy? And how can our offerings expand and change?
I mean,
I mean, prime example right here.
Yeah, I mean, we work with a ton of brands, right? And so, but any brand, you know, it's funny. One of the big boxes pitched us when we were first. They were trying to figure out, and they've subsequently gone bankrupt, but they were trying to figure out how could they be relevant. And they said, what would it take to get into Area 15? And your first reaction was nothing. And I actually wrote them up a white paper. I said, all right, why don't you create a pop-up experience of your brand you know, it's 2100 in an era of extreme climate change, and what are you selling, right? And it was this idea of like, it doesn't, you can't, you know, do something that actually is about who you are as a brand value, and create this really cool immersive experience that stands for something. And look, they just didn't, right? And whether my idea was good or not, I think brands that understand they have to sell the emotion of their product versus the product are more successful. Apple. Are they dancing or and I love Microsoft, but it was like, this thing opens up 32 windows and you can do things. And Steve Jobs was like, yeah, right? And look where they went, right? So brands, whether you're a hotel brand, whether you're a developer, you have to sell the emotion, and you need to work with other people. If you're a closed loop, you're contained. You should be attaching yourself with other brands and doing really cool shit.
Well, if you think about what Vince has done with Meow Wolf, it's about the sort of surprise and delight, right? Like the great collabs in the consumer products world are about the surprise and delight of putting together. I mean, I remember when I was at Disney, there was a collab between the Disney villains and the fashion designer, the Blondes. And it was like this, everybody was like, oh my God, my head just exploded because this was so unexpected and so cool. And there's something about putting together two beloved brands in a new way that I think really can create exponentially more value, and open up whole new paths of branding.
Vince, how about for you?
We don't work with other brands, at least at current, you know, so it's kind of hard to say. I've been sitting here trying to be like, how would I answer this question? But we created like 200 of our own sub-brands that we sell products of inside of Omega Mart, which is the exhibition in Las Vegas. It's a fake grocery store, and we created a bunch of fake brands within that grocery store. You know, like laundry detergent that's called plausible deniability, or I can't remember the other ones.
They're really fun.
Yeah.
They're really fun.
Who told you this was butter? It's not butter. It's butter-scented air freshener. And so we created all those brands. And I guess what we found, similar to what Darcy's saying here, is people are loving absurdity inside of these like brand collaborations, you know? I mean, people are like loving that sort of like collision of two things that don't necessarily make sense together. But yeah, we have never worked with another brand before, so it's hard for me to answer.
Gary?
Yeah, I'll just say that you want to work with brands that represent who you are, and you don't want to associate with those that don't. As soon as you do, you lessen your own brand.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, brand partnerships, there's a lot of storytelling, design stuff. Let's talk about just a little bit that's not always as fun, but the challenges, because it's real. And, you know, the experience economy, although it is booming, it is still not immune to challenges. So, you know, whether it's the pressure to try to keep up with trends, we know we see that within hospitality a lot, accessibility, quality control, you know, what are you doing to navigate some of these challenges that you're faced?
I mean, listen, I can tell you, I mentioned, you know, name your favorite immersive artist exhibits is a great example of, there was initially a really great Van Gogh exhibit in Paris at L'Atelier de Lumière, was amazing, and Van Gogh's in the public domain, and so other people started doing the same thing, and next thing you know, we have literally, I think there were 40 different companies creating immersive Van Gogh exhibits, and a lot of them were very poor quality, and that ended up having a negative halo effect, because I, the consumer, don't know the difference between the immersive Van Gogh, the Van Gogh, the immersive exhibit, Van Gogh immersive, Van Gogh, they all had different flavors of the same name, and it was very frustrating because that has a real, knock-on effect for the entire industry. So things I worry about a lot are, and kind of what you were saying, Winston, like sometimes, people look at something that's successful, and so they're like, okay, I want to do that again because I know I can prove it was successful. And then you end up with kind of like the photocopier versions that are just not as good. So, for me, I really look for people who have, just as we've been saying, authentic visions that reflect who they are and tell a story, and where I feel they're really kind of bringing themselves to the table versus, so I'll say companies like Fever who have done, have brought some more data into how we think about experiences, have been very valuable in a lot of ways, but also sometimes there's too much reliance on this sort of sense of, these things work, therefore I'm going to do these things again. And so I think it has to be a balance between leveraging the data and listening to your own creative sensibility and your own kind of authentic brand in order to build something that's meaningful.
I think one of the biggest challenges, generally in the world of immersive and quality experience is that it's expensive. It's more money. Like you can't cut corners.
Right.
You've got it, like whether it's physical build out, interior design type thinking, that's going to cost more. You've got to put money towards that. If it's sound design, operationally, if you want to have like a really good, like experience focused operations staff, that's going to take more training. You have to hire more, higher quality people. The experience economy is a more expensive economy, and there's things that, and I think you can also charge more. I think Meow Wolf thing has proven like, wow, people will spend $50 to go and walk around 30,000 square feet for an hour and a half, rather than spending $50 to walk around 400 acres of a theme park for 8 hours. So we kind of cracked a code there, and I think so the money can be made, the pro formas pencil out, but then convincing the real estate developer to put up 3 times the TI, or the bank to lend, or the financiers to support. It's harder. Like we're at the early stages of proving out that the higher cost to build will pencil out into a higher, a higher per cap. But hopefully we get more success stories like Winston and like myself, and we can start to prove that out even more. So
I mean, look, I guess every business, it goes to what Vince is saying, Darcy, is, look, you got to have a relentless focus on customer service. You got to, you have to really know who you are and not sacrifice, right? You have to create a team and a culture that understands the vision and is always working towards it. You have to, it's a commitment to excellence. It's understanding, understanding how you use data. I wish there was one little thing that you could point to, but it's the difference between a good company and a bad company. Good companies focus on everything. They get it. Or they focus on what they know are their value drivers, not everything. And they make a commitment to that. Bad companies are sloppy, are lazy. If you want bad customer service and you don't want to train your staff, it doesn't matter what we talk about how cool the experience is, because you're going to get a bad review. So you really have to know. If you're in a hotel, everybody's a critic. Everybody's checking in, right? So how are you connecting? How are you giving them? The room has to be clean. All of those things. You got to have a commitment to running a good business. And that also starts with good people. You got to hire really, really good people who know what they're doing.
Gary?
Look, the challenge is when you don't control all the moving parts. So, in this industry, hospitality, hotel space industry, you may control in some hotels all the parts, meaning you own, you operate, you hire, you fire, you spend your capital. And others you may manage, but you don't own, and you don't spend your own capital. And others you don't manage, you don't own, and you don't spend your own capital. And so then you've got control of influence, but you don't have the day-to-day. Biggest challenge is somebody sees a brand and they love that brand. And they say, I want one of those. And I want to go build one. But I don't want to do this, 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 and this.
Mm-hmm.
But then you don't have that brand, okay? Or then they say, I want one of those, and they go build one of those. And then they say, but yeah, that rooftop bar isn't doing so well on a Tuesday and Wednesday and a Thursday, so we're going to sell it to a group on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which I don't know about you, but I don't go back to a bar that's closed when I want to go to the bar when it's on the rooftop, because you've just killed the business at that point in time, right? So that's your challenge. Your challenge is managing through the fact that you don't necessarily control all the moving parts, that you have to be able to sell the right brand to the right people, understanding somebody wants to build a Park Hyatt in someplace in China. Doesn't do us any good if the hotel runs 40% occupancy at $40 RevPAR. Doesn't help you.
Right.
So that's within our control, and those are the things that we have to do. But I think those are the challenges. You've got to be able. It's when you can control everything, then it's all on you, and you can do all of that. It becomes a lot harder, not impossible.
Mm-hmm.
But it becomes a lot harder. When you're a good company, I agree, you can control a lot of it, and you can make sure that you take a lot of the issues out up front. But if you become sloppy up front, then forget it. You've completely lost control of what your product's going to be.
And I know we're getting close to our time, so I do want to leave us with this one question. And Vince, you were kind of starting to talk a little bit about what's going to happen in the experience economy, and that's where I want to finish. So what trends do you see happening in the experience economy? What are things that are going to have to adapt, and what's going to stay familiar to the guest, and what's going to need to evolve and change? So how about you start us off, Vince?
Well, I mean, I think what I was alluding to earlier is just it's going to be tough, but folks are going to want to have experiences that blow their mind, and I think that the translation there is it's an experience that's feels like it's changed their life in some way. I think that's where the kind of consumer trend is going to get to.
Yeah.
It's already kind of I want to go and do something that I've never done before, or experience something that I've never experienced before, seen something I've never seen before. So what happens when they've now already seen a Meow Wolf? What's next?
Right.
We have to keep blowing people's minds, and I think it's a tough. It's going to be hard for physical build out to do that. So it's going to have to be driven by digital.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's where content refresh. That's where kind of ongoing kind of blowing of mind can happen. And with that, it's we need headsets, and it's everything points to headset. Will the AR headset take off or not? Will spatial computing actually become commonplace? And if the answer is yes, then anyone who owns square footage or operates square footage needs to think about how augmented reality is going to interweave into their square footage.
Sure.
So that's going to be a key. It's the difference, people say augmented reality, it's already here and people don't really use it. It's already here on our mobile phones. It's the difference between web browsing on your BlackBerry versus web browsing on your iPhone. Once and if headset ARs are adopted, everyone is going to be experiencing AR within square footages, within spatial computing environments. And there's going to be a mad rush. Anyone who had a business had to have a website. Anyone who has a building has to have an AR overlay. Mm-hmm. It's going to get to that point. So I think that's the future of immersive experience and experiential is going to end up being the digital overlay to everything. Yeah.
Economy.
I think also, and Winston and I have talked a little bit about this. I think, yes, there's going to be this ongoing need for what blows my mind. But I think actually, and I think it's interesting to think about this in the context of hospitality and hotels, I think there's going to be a real evolution towards kind of, I think of them as ecosystems. So rather than really focusing on individual experiences, focusing on how experiences work together as an organism, right? This is like the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Not every experience has to blow my mind. If I have, and this is AREA15 is the perfect example.
Yeah, exactly. You don't
right? Like Meow Wolf is what draws me in, but it's all the other little things that keep me there. And we were talking about this earlier too, like, you know, theme parks are big commitments of time, often travel, money. And also now, if you don't plan them in advance, like a military expedition, you're having a bad experience.
Yeah.
So the idea of a place where I can go, I know I'm going to Meow Wolf, but after that, I'm just going to have fun. I'm just going to explore. I think there's a real future for those kinds of ecosystems. And that can be in a hospitality environment, right? It can be, I'm staying here too, but I've built this kind of ecosystem or neighborhood or district around me that becomes this place where I can really hang out. So for me, I'm really fascinated by that as the future of where experience is going.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably echo both. I think placemaking and brand building, I actually think of real estate as brands, not as physical space, is going to be so important. So emotional connection, but the digital physical intersection is, in my mind, the brave new world. And I actually think there is going to be AR overlays. It's here. It's going to get deeper. It's going to be more profound. But we're also going to be getting into hologram images. We're going to be getting into you can walk in the new JP Morgan building. It knows you when you walk in. Your elevator is waiting for you. Your coffee's ready when you get upstairs. It sets your temperature. I mean, the concept of digital and physical coming together, and there's so many different touch points, but you have to be both. And that is the experience economy is going to rely on. What is the temperature when you go into your hotel room? Is there a different, does the elevator change design based on who's getting in there, right? Through change. Is there a different type of hologram that speaks to you and is AI driven? I am not actually speaking about anything that's far-fetched. That's off-the-shelf technology. I didn't make up anything there. That actually exists. You could go buy it pretty cheap. So if you're not paying attention to more broad-based than just AR, the digital physical intersection with emotional connection, you're going to be left behind.
Gary?
Yeah, I wish I was better at seeing down the road, let alone around the corner, because I think that's a real skill, and it's evidenced by the very few individuals that have done it in the world. You can count them, on not too many fingers. That have really changed things because they were able to see around that corner down the world. I will just speak to maybe a challenge relative to the future, and that's the fact that we have physical space, we have physical real estate, and it doesn't go away like the iPhone goes away when the 15 comes out. You've got all of this huge amounts of existing real estate that some becomes obsolete day by day. Think about an old Holiday Inn by the roadside, but then sees a new day. That now somebody's thinking, what can that be again? And create something. And so, whatever it is, I think we've got to pick and choose on what you can do and how you can do it and make it down that road, because it's a rabbit hole of capital. When you start thinking about what's necessary and where do you apply it in each one of your different assets. The good news, I think, is that so much of what's happening in the technology is individual, and so they're bringing it with them. Every time we in our spaces try and create the, which plug are we going to use and which port are we going to use, they become obsolete. I can remember 50,000 iHomes sitting in guest rooms that had the old Apple 8-prong charger in it. That one day they were obsolete. And I've got an older little sports car that's got 2 adapters onto the adapter now that it says it will no longer work with the latest adapter to it, because it's become obsolete. So anyway, I think those are our challenges, and with the ownership groups they have, it has to be proven to them before they will say, I'm going to go ahead and take my capital and put it here. That's I can't see around the corner, unfortunately.
Well, this has been great. Let's give it up for our panelists, you guys. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it.
Awesome.